The lights in the room were soft blue. Machines made gentle beeping sounds. A thin line of vapor came out from one of the vents on the wall. The room smelled like metal and something sweet. It was not Earth. It was not home. Ravi opened his eyes. Slowly, his body felt heavy, like he was underwater. He could not remember how he got here. All he knew was pain, then darkness, then now this strange room, with soft air and cold sheets. He tried to move but groaned. His arms were weak, his legs stiff. He looked to the side. A small screen showed moving green lines. His heart, his breath. His temperature dipped suddenly. The door opened. She walked in tall, smooth-skinned, and quiet. Her skin was gray with a soft shine, like silver dust. Her eyes glowed pale blue. And she wore a long white coat with a small silver symbol near her neck. Ravi blinked. He had never seen anyone like her. She looked like a person but not human, alien. She walked up to him and checked the machine. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. Then she spoke in a calm, clear voice. "Do not touch me." Ravi opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. She placed a small tray beside him with food, then turned and left the room. The door closed. With a soft hiss, Ravi stared at the tray. The food looked strange but smelled warm. He tried to sit up and take a bite. It wasn't bad, soft and sweet, like rice with fruit. After eating, he looked around the room again. There were no windows, just one door, a machine in the corner, and shelves with smooth boxes. Hours passed, or maybe days. Ravi lost track of time. Each time he woke up, the same. Nurse came in. She checked the machines, gave him food, sometimes gave him small pills. But she never smiled, never spoke except for the same words, "Do not touch me." Ravi started to wonder if she was a robot, but her hand shook slightly when she held the tray. Her eyes sometimes blinked too fast. She was real, alive, but distant. He tried to talk. "Hello," he said one day. "Can you understand me?" She looked at him, nodded once, but didn't reply. "My name is Ravi." He tried again. "What's yours?" She paused for a second, then said softly, "Tira." It was the first new word she had spoken to him. "Nice to meet you, Tira." Ravi smiled. "Thank you for helping me." She didn't answer. She turned and left the room again. Days passed. Ravi began to heal. He could move more, sit up, walk, a little with help. Tira came each day. She brought food, medicine, and checked his progress. She always kept her distance. If his hand came close to hers by accident, she pulled away quickly and said firmly, "Do not touch me." But Ravi noticed small things. She placed his food carefully, making sure it was never too hot. She folded his blanket neatly. She once stayed longer when he had trouble breathing in his sleep, standing by his side quietly until the machine calmed down. She cared. But something stopped her from showing it fully. One afternoon, Ravi found an old photo in the pocket of the clothes he wore before the accident. It was a picture of his family, his mother, father, and younger sister, all smiling under the sun. He stared at it for a long time. When Tira entered, he held up the photo. "This is my family," he said. "I miss them." Tira walked over slowly. She looked at the photo, then at him. Her glowing eyes softened. She took the photo from his hand carefully. Her long fingers held it gently. She stared at it for several seconds. Then she placed it beside his bed and turned to leave. But this time, she didn't say, "Do not touch me." Ravi felt a strange warmth in his chest. It was small, but it was something. He began to draw pictures to pass the time. He found a screen that allowed drawing with fingers. He made simple sketches of his home, trees, stars, animals. He tried to draw Tira, too. She didn't say anything when she saw them, but she paused for a little longer each time. One day, she stopped at his drawing of two hands holding each other, a human hand and an alien hand. She looked at it silently. Then softly, she whispered, "That is not allowed." Ravi looked at her. "Why not?" he asked. She didn't answer. She turned and left again. Ravi was curious now. He asked other nurses who passed by his room, but they never spoke much. One old alien cleaner gave him a quiet reply. Tira does not allow touch. She carries a memory that hurts. Ravi didn't know what that meant, but he wanted to find out. Not out of rudeness, but because he cared. She was helping him heal. Maybe, just maybe, she needed healing too. Ravi was healing, but his heart still felt empty. His body could now sit up on its own. He could walk slowly from his bed to the small table across the room. But the room still had no windows, no sunshine, no sound of birds, just the soft hum of machines and the quiet footsteps of nurses. Most of them never talked. They came and left like shadows. Only one stayed longer. Only one brought food and medicine every day. Tira. She was always quiet, always serious. But Ravi had started to see things differently. Her silence was not cold anymore. It was sad. Her careful steps were not distant. They were heavy, like someone walking with a memory too strong to forget. One morning, Ravi sat on the edge of his bed, holding the drawing tablet. He had drawn a tree from his village, a big one, with many leaves and a swing tied to its branch. He showed it to Tira as she entered. "This is from my home," he said softly. "We used to play under this tree." Tira looked at it for a moment. Her glowing eyes became still. Then she said, in a quiet voice, "What is a swing?" Ravi smiled. "It's like a seat that hangs from a rope. You sit on it and swing back and forth, like flying, but not too high." Tira stared at the picture again. "It looks peaceful," she said. "It was," Ravi said. "I hope to see it again." She didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. She stood there for a few extra seconds before turning to check the machines. It was the first real conversation between them. In the next few days, something changed. Tira began to ask small questions. Does your world have the suns? What are clouds made of? Why do humans laugh? They were short questions, but Ravi answered them with joy. He felt like she was opening a small door inside herself, letting a little light come through. And every time she listened, her face looked a little less tense. Ravi asked her about her planet. She answered carefully. "My world is called Eller," she said. "It is quiet, gray skies, tall trees. We do not speak much. We listen more. Sounds." "Calm," Ravi said. "It is," she nodded. "But it can be lonely." Her voice grew soft. Ravi didn't push more. He simply said, "Maybe that's why I ended up here." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because the lonely people understand each other better than 100 noisy ones." Tira didn't smile, but her eyes blinked slower, gently. One evening, something unexpected happened. Ravi was trying to stand without help. His leg slipped, and he dropped the drawing tablet. It slid under the table. He bent to pick it up, but before he could, Tira stepped forward quickly and lifted it for him. Their hands touched for just 1 second. She froze. Her hand trembled. Her fingers dropped the tablet. Her breathing changed. And then, to Ravi's surprise, she turned around and walked out of the room without a word. Ravi sat back down, confused. He didn't mean to upset her. He didn't hold her hand or do anything wrong. It was just an accident. But something about that moment, that one touch, had shaken her deeply. The next day, Tira did not come. Instead, a tall alien male brought Ravi's food. He didn't speak. Ravi asked where Tira was, but the nurse simply shook his head and left. That evening, another nurse came, a short one with greenish skin and wide eyes. Ravi asked again, "Where's Tira? Is she okay?" The nurse looked around to make sure no one was listening, then whispered, "She is remembering." "Please wait." "Remembering what?" Ravi asked. The nurse didn't reply. She left silently. Ravi couldn't sleep that night. He stared at the ceiling, thinking, what was Tira remembering? What had his touch done? He didn't mean harm. He didn't break any rule. But he had crossed a wall, one that she had kept up for a reason. Now she was gone. The next day passed slowly. Ravi sat in the room alone, drawing pictures of Earth, the swing, the tree, his family, and finally, he drew a picture of himself and Tira standing side by side. That evening, the door opened. It was her. Tira stepped in slowly. Her eyes looked tired, Like she hadn't slept, her hands stayed hidden in her long sleeves. She didn't come close. Ravi stood up carefully. Tira, he said gently, I'm sorry. She shook her head. You did nothing wrong. Then why did you leave? Tira was silent. Then she spoke softly. Your touch reminded me of someone I lost, a human child. Many years ago. Ravi sat back down. Listening quietly, Tira continued, I was a young nurse during the war. Your kind and mine were not always friends, but I was assigned to help human children who were hurt. Her voice broke slightly. She paused, then kept going. There was one boy. His name was Sammy. He was small, brave, and always smiled. When he was scared, he held my hand. He said it made him feel safe. Ravi swallowed. The room felt still. One day, Tira whispered, a bomb hit the building. I held him close. But he didn't survive. She closed her eyes. After that, I couldn't let anyone touch me. Not again. Because I feared I would remember his hand. In the way it stopped moving, a tear slipped down her cheek. I said, don't touch me, not because I hate it, she said, but because I remember love and loss. Ravi didn't speak. He walked slowly to the edge of the table and sat on the floor. Looking up at her, I didn't know, he said. I'm sorry you had to carry that pain alone. Tira looked at him. Her eyes were softer now, warmer. She stepped a little closer. You remind me of him, she said. Not your face, but your heart. Ravi nodded. Maybe that's why I was sent here. They sat together in silence, not touching, not speaking, just sharing space. And for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel empty. The days moved slowly, but something had changed. Ravi could feel it in the way Tira walked, now less stiff, more human. Her hands still stayed inside her long white sleeves, and she still never allowed touch, but her voice had become warmer. Sometimes she even stayed after giving him food. Sometimes she asked questions, and sometimes they sat together without speaking, just looking at the drawings Ravi made. She never smiled, but Ravi noticed her eyes glowed a little brighter on those days. Tira was still quiet, still distant, but no longer cold. One morning, Ravi woke up feeling better than usual. His legs no longer shook when he stood. The room didn't feel as strange. He smiled to himself. Healing was not just for the body. It was something deeper too. He pressed the call button. No answer. Curious, he opened the door. To his surprise, it wasn't locked. He had never walked beyond his room before. The hallway outside was empty and quiet. Soft blue lights lined the walls. Ravi walked slowly, holding onto the railing. His steps were still weak, but steady. He passed a few rooms. Some had doors open, showing other patients, humans, some aliens, all resting. Robots moved silently from room to room. Then he saw her. Tira. She was in a small room near the corner of the hall. The door was half open. She stood alone inside, tapping on a glowing screen. The walls of the room were lined with glass cabinets, full of supplies. Ravi stepped closer. He didn't want to scare her, so he gently knocked on the side of the door. Tira turned quickly, surprised. Her eyes widened. You should be in your room, she said. I felt strong today. Ravi smiled. I thought maybe I could walk a little. I didn't mean to break any rule. Tira looked at him for a moment. Her eyes moved to his legs. You are healing faster than expected. Ravi stepped inside, slowly. What is this place? It's the storage room, she replied. We prepare medicines here. On the counter, a small silver tablet lay glowing with blue light. Tira picked it up, but it slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. Without thinking, Ravi bent down and picked it up. As he lifted it toward her, his hand brushed against hers. Just for a second, but it was enough. Tira froze. Her fingers remained in the air. Her eyes trembled. She looked down at their hands, then back at Ravi's face. Ravi pulled his hand away quickly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But Tira's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak. She didn't run. She simply stood there. Then slowly, she raised her hands to her face. Her fingers pressed against her glowing eyes. and the tears began to fall silent, clear, and heavy. Ravi stood still, unsure what to do. She whispered something, but it was so soft, he couldn't hear. He took one small step closer. Tira, she shook her head. It hurts, but also, it feels real. Her voice was trembling. I tried to forget. I tried to stop remembering. But when you touched me, I remembered his hand. Sammy's hand. Her shoulders shook as more tears fell. It was so warm. Just like yours. Ravi spoke gently. Maybe that's not a bad thing. She looked at him, confused. He continued. Maybe remembering isn't pain. Maybe it's the way we keep them with us. Not to hurt, but to honor. Tira said nothing. She slowly walked past him and sat down on the small bench inside the room. Her hands were open now, no longer hiding. I don't want to forget him, she said. But I didn't know how to carry that memory. So I closed everything. Ravi sat beside her. Not too close. You don't have to close it anymore. Tira looked at him. How are humans so good at this? At what? Feeling pain and still smiling. Ravi gave a small laugh. We cry too. We just keep going. That's what my mother always said. The heart is stronger than we think. Tira looked at her hands. Then, without fear, she touched her own palm, slowly, gently. His fingers were smaller, she said, but the warmth was the same. She closed her hand into a soft fist, holding the memory. Ravi didn't say anything. He just sat with her, not touching, just being there. Later, she walked him back to his room. They passed the quiet halls together. Other nurses nodded, but didn't stop. Ravi could feel their eyes, curious, maybe even surprised, but no one said anything. Back in the room, Tira helped him sit down. She paused before leaving. I may not be able to accept touch always, she said, but today, I did. And I didn't break. Ravi smiled. You didn't just accept it, you faced your past. That takes strength. Tira nodded. Thank you, Ravi. He looked at her. Anytime. She turned to go. But then, just before the door closed, she said quietly, maybe tomorrow. We talk more. Ravi leaned back in bed, smiling. The stars outside might still be far away, but here, in a silent room on a silent ship, two souls were beginning to find each other. The room felt different now. Ravi noticed it the next morning when he opened his eyes. It was quiet, like always, but it no longer felt cold. The machine still beeped, and the walls were still smooth and silver, but something inside him had changed. Tira entered as usual, carrying a tray with breakfast and medicine. But this time, she didn't leave the tray and turn away. She stayed. Good morning, she said softly. It was the first time she had ever said that. Good morning, Ravi replied. Surprised and happy, you sound better today. I feel lighter, Tira said. She sat down beside his bed, not too close, but closer than ever before. Ravi picked up a piece of bread from the tray. This food is starting to taste like something now. She raised one eyebrow. Was it bad before? No, just not like home. He smiled. But I think I'm getting used to it. Tira nodded. That happens. Our bodies adjust first, then our hearts. Ravi looked at her. Is that what's happening with you? She was quiet for a moment. Maybe. I have carried pain for many years. I buried it deep, but it never left me. It only stayed quiet. Ravi nodded. He understood that feeling. She continued, when you touched me, it was like someone opened a box I had locked a long time ago. Inside was not just pain but also warmth. They both sat in silence for a while. Then Tira stood and walked to the shelf beside his bed. She picked up the drawing tablet. May I see what you've drawn lately? Ravi smiled. Of course. She looked through his drawings, trees, swings, people, stars. One drawing showed a small boy holding hands with a tall alien nurse. Tira paused there. Her eyes grew still. He looks like him, she whispered. Sammy, she nodded. He would be older now. If he had lived. Ravi said nothing. He knew there were no words strong enough to fix that kind of lost. Then Tira spoke again. You want to know more about him? Ravi looked at her gently. Only if you want to tell me. She sat down again and began to speak. Sammy was 8 years old. He had brown eyes and short hair. He had a small scar on his chin from falling. Once during play, he loved to draw too. He drew stars and animals. He laughed every time I brought him paper. Tira's voice became soft and steady, like she was reading a memory from a book in her heart. He didn't care that I looked different. He said my skin reminded him of the night sky. He used to say, "Tira, you are the galaxy." Ravi smiled. "He sounds wonderful." He was, she said, even when he was sick, he smiled. I was afraid to let him grow close to me, but he didn't care. He would reach out and hold my hand every day. I told him not to, but he said, "How can I say thank you without holding your hand?" Ravi's throat tightened. He listened closely. One night, Tira continued, an attack happened. We were not ready. The building shook. Lights went out. I ran to Sammy's room. He was already crying. She paused. I held him close, and he held my hand tightly. I told him it would be okay. But it wasn't. A part of the ceiling fell. He protected me. His small body shielded mine. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she kept her voice steady. I lived. He didn't. Ravi swallowed. He had no words, only silence. Tira wiped her tears and looked at him. Since then, I didn't allow anyone to touch me, because his hand was the last I held. I thought if I touched someone else, I would forget him. But you haven't forgotten him, Ravi said gently. No, she whispered. And maybe now, I don't have to be afraid of forgetting. Maybe I can remember him in peace. Not pain. Ravi smiled. That's what humans do. We keep the ones we love in our hearts. That way, they never really leave us. Tira looked at her hands. Maybe I can learn that too. That evening, the two sat beside the table together. Tira showed Ravi how her people made memory token small carved stones that held shapes from a person's life. One stone had a star, another had a hand, another a swirl, meaning journey. Ravi listened with interest. Can I make one? Tira nodded. She brought a small round stone and placed it on the table. Then she handed him a sharp pen. What will you carve? She asked. Ravi thought for a while. Then slowly, he drew a swing, just like the one under the tree from his childhood. Tira looked at it. That's where your story begins. Yes, he smiled. And now, this place is part of that story too. She nodded. So is mine. They sat together, carving in silence. Two lives from different stars, slowly weaving together. That night, Ravi slept deeply. He dreamed of a tree under the stars, a swing moving gently in the wind, a small boy laughing, and beside him an alien nurse with silver skin, smiling softly, holding his hand without fear. The days began to pass more gently. Ravi was now able to walk across the hallway without help. His strength had returned, and the pain in his body had faded. Only a few small marks were left from the accident, but the changes inside him were far greater. Tira was different to. She still spoke softly, but now there was warmth in her voice. She still wore her white coat, and her silver-gray skin still shined in the soft light, but her eyes no longer held only sadness. Now, they showed something new. Trust. She no longer said, "Don't touch me." She didn't speak those words anymore. And even though they didn't often touch, she didn't pull away when their hands brushed. She didn't freeze or run. Instead, she breathed deeply and remained present. For Ravi, that meant more than any hug. One afternoon, Ravi sat beside her in the hospital's indoor garden, a quiet place filled with strange alien plants. Some glowed softly, some made tiny humming sounds. The air was calm and warm. Tira handed him a small object wrapped in cloth. What's this? Ravi asked. A gift, she said. It's a memory token. I carved it myself. Ravi carefully unwrapped it. It was a smooth black stone, with a carved symbol of two hands, one human, one alien reaching toward each other, but not yet touching. He stared at it for a long time. This is beautiful. It means hope, Tira explained. Hope that we can meet halfway. Ravi looked at her. You're already halfway there. Tira gave a small smile, the first real one he had seen. I wanted to give you something too. Ravi said. He reached into his bag and took out a folded photo. It was worn. The colors slightly faded, but it still showed a happy family smiling in sunlight. "This is my family," he said. "We took this the day before I left Earth." Tira looked at the photo with care. She gently touched the edge with her finger. "You should keep it," she said. Ravi shook his head. "I want you to have it. You kept me human in this place. Even when I was far from home." Tira didn't speak. She held the photo close, then placed it carefully into her coat pocket. "Thank you, Ravi," she whispered, "for letting me remember that I'm not alone. But peace never stays forever." Late that night, the ship's alarm rang out a low, shaking sound that filled every hallway. The lights turned red. Ravi sat up quickly in bed. The air felt different, heavy, hot. He could smell something burning. The speaker on the wall spoke in a strange language first, then switched to Earth Common. "Emergency. Power failure in Section 3. Backup systems activated. All patients must stay in rooms. Medical staff, report immediately." Ravi stood up. "Section 3. He whispered. "That's near us." He pressed the door button. Nothing happened. It stayed locked. The room grew darker. Then he heard a loud crash outside, followed by running footsteps. Suddenly, smoke began to rise from the corner vent. Ravi coughed. He backed away, holding a cloth over his mouth. The machines next to his bed blinked once, then shut off completely. He was alone. Trapped. Just when he thought he would faint, the door opened with a sharp hiss. Tira stood there, her coat dirty, her face marked with ash. She was breathing hard. "Ravi," she called. "Tira." He coughed. "The smoke, no time," she said. "We must go now." She grabbed his hand. For the first time, she held it tightly. Ravi's eyes widened, but he didn't say a word. Her fingers were strong, warm, real. Together, they ran into the hallway. The walls were flashing with red lights. Sparks flew from broken wires. A small fire burned in the corner, and robots were using foam to stop it. "Where are we going?" Ravi shouted over the noise. "There's an escape corridor behind the lab," Tira said. "It's safe there. From there, we can move to a stable zone." She pulled him through the smoke. Her steps were quick, confident. Ravi followed, coughing, but focused. He trusted her completely. They reached the side door. Tira pressed a code on the panel. The door opened, and cool air rushed out. Inside was a narrow tunnel lined with silver light. "Go," she said, pushing him forward. But just as they entered, another explosion hit the side of the ship. The tunnel shook, and Tira stumbled. Ravi turned back and caught her just in time. This time, he held her. Not just her hand, her whole body. She looked up, eyes wide. He whispered, "I've got you." She didn't pull away. She didn't say, "Don't touch me." She held onto him tighter. After a few minutes, the alarm finally stopped. The lights turned back to normal. Medical staff came through the tunnel, checking for injuries. Ravi and Tira were both safe. A doctor offered to take Tira for rest, but she shook her head. "I will stay with him," she said, pointing to Ravi. "He's my patient." The doctor nodded and moved on. As they walked back to the main section, Ravi said, "You held my hand this time." Tira looked at him, calm and strong. "You held mine first." He smiled. "I won't tell anyone if you don't." She smiled back, too. Lady, everyone saw. Back in his room, Tira sat beside his bed as he drank water and rested. "Tira," Ravi said softly, "you've changed." She looked at the memory token in his hand. "So have you." They sat in silence again, but now the silence felt warm, too. People from different worlds, one human, one alien linked not by blood, not by language, but by something deeper. By care, by memory, by the simple power of a hand that dared to reach out. Ravi's room was calm again. The soft blue lights had returned. The machines were back online. The scent of smoke had faded, replaced by a faint smell of herbs. It was peaceful. But Ravi knew that something big had changed. Tira had held his hand, not once, but twice. Not because she had to, not because of duty, but because she wanted to. He sat on the edge of his bed, holding the memory token she had given him. The carved hands on the stone reminded him of that moment in the tunnel, the moment when fear did not push her away, but brought her closer. He looked up as the door opened. Tira entered quietly, holding two cups. One had a warm drink from her world. The other had tea, something close to what humans drank. She handed Ravi the tea and sat beside him. No alarms today, Ravi smiled. No explosions either. She said, with the softest curve of a smile on her face. They both sipped in silence. You said something to me during the fire, Ravi said, looking into his cup. You call me your patient. Tira looked at him. Yes, you are. But I'm healing now, almost fully recovered. What happens when I leave? She was silent for a long moment. You will return to Earth, she said. That is the rule. And you? He asked. I will remain here, on this station. That is also the rule. Ravi nodded slowly. I don't like these rules. Neither do I, she said quietly. For a while, they said nothing. Then Tira spoke again. In my world, we are taught to follow rules, to not show too much feeling, to never mix heart and duty. But you already did, Ravi said. Yes, she agreed. And I do not regret it. He smiled. Me neither. Later that day, they walked together through the garden again. Ravi moved slowly, but no longer needed the railings. Tira walked beside him, pointing out the names of different plants. That one is called lunari, she said. Its leaves glow when someone is near. Like a night lamp, Ravi smiled. Tira nodded. Some say it can feel loneliness. Then it must be glowing all the time near me. Tira stopped and turned toward him. Not anymore. Ravi looked at her. No, not anymore. They sat on a bench. Birds flew past the transparent ceiling above, and the stars beyond the glass seemed close, like they could be touched with an outstretched hand. I used to think humans were weak, Tira said suddenly, too emotional, too quick to feel. And now, Ravi asked, now I see emotion is not weakness, it is strength. You teach others to feel again, even when it hurts, Ravi chuckled. Some say that's just being stubborn. She looked at him. Maybe. But your stubbornness helped me remember who I was before the fear. Ravi turned his head. And who was that? A nurse who cared too much, a friend who wanted to hold someone's hand, a person who believed healing was more than just medicine. Back in his room, Ravi received a message on his wall screen. Earth transport scheduled, 2 days. Prepare for return. He stared at it. The words felt sharp, even though he knew they were coming. Tira saw the message too. She said nothing, but her face grew quiet. You knew this was coming. He said, yes, she replied. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Ravi looked at her. I don't want to go. Tira didn't answer at first. Then she said, I do not want you to go either. But it is not our choice. He placed the memory token beside her hand. Will you remember me? I will remember you every day. She said, you broke through a wall I thought would never fall. Ravi gave a sad smile. You broke through mine too. I didn't even know I had one. That night, Ravi couldn't sleep. He sat up, staring at the stars outside his window. The station moved slowly through space, silent and steady. But inside him, thoughts were loud. He stood and walked quietly into the hall. There was no one around. The lights were dim. He walked toward the garden. He wasn't surprised to find Tira there. She stood under the glowing tree, her face lifted toward the stars. You couldn't sleep either? He asked. She turned. I was saying goodbye to the sky. They sat under the tree. Can I ask you something? Ravi said. Of course. What would have happened if I never touched your hand? Tira looked up. I would still be silent, still trapped in memory, still afraid. And now I know I can heal too. They looked at each other. Tira, Ravi said, I know I'm leaving, but I don't want the cess to just end here. She nodded. I understand. He reached out his hand gently, openly. Tira looked at it for a second. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. No fear. No flinch. Only calm. I don't know what the future holds, she said, but I believe we will meet again. I believe. That too, Ravi whispered. When morning came, the station was busy. Ravi's shuttle was ready. He had packed his things only a few items, but each one carried a story. The memory token, a carved stone, a piece of cloth with her people's symbol. Tira walked with him to the dock. They didn't speak much. Words felt too small. As Ravi stepped onto the shuttle, he turned back. "I'll miss your voice," he said. "I'll miss your drawings," she replied. Then, in front of everyone, Tira stepped forward and hugged him. Just for a moment, the station workers stared, but neither of them cared. When she let go, there were tears in her eyes, but this time, they were not from pain. They were from peace. Ravi boarded the ship, holding the memory token in his palm. As the shuttle rose, he saw her still standing there, watching. Not as a nurse, not as an alien, but as a friend. Back on Earth, the world looked different to Ravi. The air was warm, the sky wide and blue, and people walked fast, always in a hurry. But for Ravi, time moved slowly. His heart was still floating somewhere far above, on that quiet station between the stars. He walked the familiar streets, saw familiar faces, even visited his favorite tea stall. But something was missing. No one asked about Tira. No one knew her name. That made him feel lonely. He returned to his small flat and unpacked. Slowly, among his things was the stone memory token. The two carved hands on it reminded him of her touch, of the first time she held his hand and wept, of the time she smiled without fear. He placed the stone near the window, where the morning light touched it every day. Weeks passed. Ravi began to write, not reports or news. He wrote stories, stories of healing, space, and friendship. Stories where humans and aliens were not enemies, but bridges to each other. He didn't use her real name, but anyone who read his stories could feel her presence, kind, quiet, strong. His stories began to spread. People liked them, shared them. Someone even turned them into short holofilms. One line became famous: "Healing begins when you are no longer afraid to feel." Ravi smiled when he heard that line in public places. It reminded him that the touch he gave to one person had now touched many. One day, Ravi got a message on his screen. It was simple: "You are invited to speak at the Galactic Peace Forum, Luna Station. Topic: Human compassion across borders." Ravi stared at the message, heart pounding. He hadn't been back to space since his recovery. But now, the stars were calling again, not with fear, but with hope. When Ravi arrived at Luna Station, it felt both strange and familiar. The hallways were wider, the light softer. Many species walked together now, sharing tools, food, even jokes. His stories had not only traveled, they had changed minds. He spoke on stage, in front of humans, aliens, ambassadors, and scientists. He spoke not as a hero, not as a soldier, but as a patient, a man who once lay broken in bed and was healed by a nurse who couldn't even touch him at first. He told the story of the stone, the story of silence, the story of one alien who risked everything to hold a human's hand. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then it stood, and everyone clapped. Not because the story was great, but because it was true. After the talk, Ravi walked through the station quietly. He didn't expect to see her. It had been too long. Too many borders, too many rules. Still, part of him hoped. As he reached the garden, full of lunary plants and soft light, he stopped. A figure was standing by the glowing tree. She wore the same white robe. Her blue skin reflected the light of the stars. It was Tira. He froze. She turned. Their eyes met. No guards, no rules, no pain. Just two people who had once touched each other's lives in the darkest hour. Ravi stepped forward. "I didn't think I'd see you again." Tira smiled softly. "I asked for this post. Luna Station is neutral space now. We are allowed to choose where we work." He laughed. "So the nurse chooses the moon." She stepped closer. "I chose you." They sat on the bench under the tree again. Just like before. Only now, the silence between them was full of peace, not fear. "You changed everything," Tira said. "Back on the station, when you touched me, I thought I would break. But I didn't. I woke up. You changed me too," Ravi said. "I never thought healing could be so quiet." Tira reached into her pocket and handed him something, a new memory token. This one had two hands joined together, not just reaching. "This is ours," she said. Ravi held it tight. He didn't need to ask what it meant. As the sun rose over the earth in the distance, Ravi and Tira stood near the window. Ships moved in the sky. Languages from 100 worlds filled the halls behind them. But in that small corner, under the stars, stood a man and a nurse, a human and an alien. Friends. Maybe more. What had started with a touch, with tears, with pain, had become a path of light for both their worlds, and far away, on a different station, another young alien nurse sat in training. She watched a holoclip of Ravi's speech. She asked her teacher, "Is it true that a human healed someone just by holding her hand?" The teacher smiled. "Yes, he didn't just heal her. He helped her feel alive again." The young nurse looked at her own hands and wondered what if she could do the same. The end.